Hi, this is Angela Cox, and I'm going to show you how to lay out and sew your dinosaur. So first of all, when we have our dinosaur, you're going to pick one of your sides of your dino, right? And then with its eye facing towards you. Right? And remember, I can't do this step until after I've sewn on the eyes. Right? So then after that, I'm going to take the other eye and I'm going to put them together. When you sew your dino, you are going to sew the right sides together, right? So here I am, and I am going to pin these together so that they don't move, right? And remember, when I pin with a straight pin, I go through so that I can see my end of my needle or my pin, and then I pop it up so that I can see, I should be able to see both sides of this pin on the same side there, right? And I'm just going to pin it so that it does not move on me, right? I'm going to be using an overcast stitch for this dinosaur. And when I do an overcast stitch, I'm going to sew it inside out, but I need to leave a hole so that I can flip it, right? So I'm going to pin it, and when I use the ladder stitch to sew up that hole, it's a whole lot easier if I leave the hole in a spot that's straight. And the straightest part of this dinosaur is right over here underneath the hole, or underneath the tail, right? So I want to make, this is where I want to leave the hole, right here. Sometimes people want to leave it at the top of the head. If you do that, then the top of his head is going to look a little bit funny, right? So I'm going to pin it here, just like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my hole right here, but not at a corner. A corner on our sewing project, like right here, this area is going to take a lot of stress. So we never want to stop or end right on a corner. We always want to do it like a little bit around the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little tiny piece of paper and I am going to write the word stop. And I am going to pin it right here to my dino, simply to remind me that this is where I should stop sewing, right? That'll remind me when I get to that, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to take my threaded needle, my dino's all pinned together so he's not going to move while I sew him. And I'm going to go from where I said stop, I'm going to put my finger, and I'm going to go about one finger, and I'm going to leave a space. And this is going to be the hole that I leave. I'm going to put my needle through here, and I'm going to use an overcast stitch, right? So I got my threaded needle with my big ugly knot, and then I'm going to come around here, go through both layers of the fabric, and I'm going to use my overcast stitch, right? Just like this. And I am going to sew with this overcast stitch all the way around the perimeter of this dinosaur, right? So all the way around the perimeter of this dinosaur. And the smaller you make these stitches and the tighter you pull them, the stronger they're going to be and the better they're going to hold. If you're going to go through all of the trouble of sewing all the way around this dinosaur, you don't want to have to do it more than once, right? You want to make sure that you do it right the first time. And now you can kind of see that I'm starting to get to a pin. These pins are here to help you, to keep the fabric from moving. When you get close to them and they get in your way, take them out. Because if you're sewing, you don't need that pin to hold it in place if you've sewed up to that point. Now when I get about a hand's worth of thread left, like this, I got about a hand's worth, I'm going to tie it off because I'm not going to have enough thread. And to tie it off, just a friendly reminder that you just make your overcast stitch and then go through the loop like that. And always do it 3 times. Overcast, through the loop. Overcast, through the loop. And then use your scissors to cut this off, right? And so then I'm just going to get more thread. Now, you are not, sometimes students are like, I hate getting my thread. I'm going to make my needle. I'm going to thread my needle, and it's going to be so long that I will never have to get thread. The problem is if you get it much longer than from your hand to your elbow, what happens is the thread tangles. And that's frustrating because once it tangles and gets knots in it, then you have to cut it out, you have to sew over stitches. You don't want to do that, right? It's much easier to rethread a needle than to fix tangled thread. So here's where I stopped, and I never want to start right where I stopped. I always want to go like 1 or 2 stitches before and just sew over those couple of stitches because I don't want it to come out, right? If I'm going to go through the trouble of sewing it, then I want it to be tight, and I want it to stay exactly where it is so that I do not have to sew it again, right? So I am going to continue sewing with an overcast stitch all the way around my dinosaur. Now, be very careful on the corners, right? Because that's the areas that you're most likely to miss an area of the fabric. Like, make sure you're getting through both layers of the fabric. So I'm going to sew all the way around the edge of my dino until I get right here where I said stop with an overcast stitch.